Literacy we have here, social studies here, math in the back, fine arts here. We have electives here, as well as science here and ESC. So I need for you to go ahead and get with your content area. Mr. Wilson will come around with the binder so that you can sign in, and we'll move forward. Ms. Hamilton, if you do me a favor and ask those in the back to come on and press out so we can go ahead and get started. Good morning, Ms. Carroll.
Happy birthday, Dr. Hudson.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. 45 ain't been too bad. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I know that we're a little split, having ELA on the other side, so I'm gonna walk back and forth. But we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and get started so that you can have as much time as possible to work on your art for today. I pray that you took the time to bring page 1 of your lesson plan template, because it's going to be a great resource for you as we move through this process. So again, just to recap on where we are so we can align our thinking. Someone share with me, where do you find your standards? Where do you find your standards? CPOM is a great source to find your standards. And once we have our standards, we then transition to doing what with them when we're looking at the grand scheme of things. What are we trying to create or develop next after our standards? Learning objectives. Thank you. Thank you. We're definitely going to focus on our learning objectives. After we have our learning objectives clearly aligned to the standard, what's our next step? So our student achievement criteria. What is the difference between the student achievement criteria and the objective? Ms. Bottom?
So the student achievement criteria are the different points they have to hit in order to reach the learning objective in the day. So what the learning objective might be more broad, the student achievement criteria is very specific.
Right, so the student achievement criteria is what we're looking for that student to master that day. The student achievement criteria is what we're anticipating for the student to be able to master before they leave that day. After we have our standard, we have our learning objective, we have our student achievement criteria, what do we have next? Someone really loud. Our task. And then after our task, we will move towards, and this is more steps 5 through 7 of the art, we'll move into really clarifying what's going to be our assessment so that we know that once we look at the entire standard, that we can see exactly where the student is. So this document you've seen before, you did an excellent job last week when I walked classrooms where a good 98, 99% of you all had your perfectly whiteboard configuration. No complaints on that. Coaches have received information on those we still have to coach. But for the most part, every single classroom that I walked into had the standard posted, the learning objectives were there, the student achievement criteria was there, and the task. Let me clarify something that I see that may be a little misconception. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. When we go to common planning, we're going to develop tasks. Your bell work is a task. Your activating strategy is a task. But when I'm asking you to post the task on the board, I'm not necessarily dictating or mandating that you're putting your bell work there. This is saying that, Dr. Hudson, I have taught this standard, the students know the learning objective, they understand the student achievement criteria. Here is a task that's going to measure where they are here. Let me say that again. So when we're looking at the task, after you've taught these pieces, by the time the student walks out, the ticket out the door, so to speak, is this task. There may be other tasks that you have posted, and that's fine. But understand, when I narrow in, I'm looking at, is this a good summarizing task to see where the students are with the SAC? All right? Remember, when you're looking, if you're confused about what the standard is or is not, what the learning objective is or is not, what the SAC is or is not, go back to this document. We don't use the word assignment, we don't use the word worksheet, everything is a what? Task. All right? So here's our focus. This is the key. This is what was in the weekly bulletin. This is what your instructional coaches are going to start pushing today. We have posted everything with our whiteboard configuration with almost perfection, right? That's compliance. Dr. Hudson asked you nicely to do it, and you did it. We did a great job on that. Now we're moving into not just posting it, but we're moving to BME, where we're actually posting it and you're using it to guide your instruction. By that saying, okay, students, this is what I need to know from you before you leave class today. You're gonna need to tell me how you're gonna use your whiteboard configuration to guide your instruction, right? And as you go through the course of the lesson, that you're continuously bringing that back to the students. Have I lost anyone? BME. We've been supposedly doing that all year. So that's your BME. Okay, students, I'm now releasing you to do this task. Let's go back and let's look again at this objective so that we can make sure that you understand, or tell me, how does this task that I'm releasing you to do, how does it connect to your learning? Okay, how are you going to use the vocabulary that's embedded in this learning objective in this task? The next piece that I want you to think about is not just you using it, but your students. So if you're using the vocabulary that's embedded in the standard, that's embedded in the objectives, right? We should also hear students saying, no, let's go back and look at that task again. I don't think that we're really talking about the Mediterranean. We're talking about Africa. And they can help align that if you're looking at world history. All right? So here's where we're going. Some of you have to plan with the end in mind. I'm needing to see it posted, which we're there. I need the BME coming from the teacher. We're not there, but we're going to be there today. And we also need students to know, right, how to use that as well to build their knowledge and understanding. This is where we're going. So, planning with the end in mind, right? This is a task that I need you to complete before you leave today. You have sticky notes in your bags. Because there's a purpose behind the work that we're doing, right? So, here's the why. And here's what I need you to be able to answer before you leave here today. Once you have your arc, which you already will have created when you leave here today, as you move forward, think about how are you going to use your whiteboard configuration. When I'm talking about whiteboard configuration, your standard, your learning objective, your success student achievement criteria, and your task, how are you going to use this to guide instruction? How are you going to do it? Second question I want you to focus on, how are you going to prepare your students to use it? Because at the end of the day, we need them learning. You already know the content. How are you going to prepare your students to use it to guide their learning? So if we have it, I'm going to give it to you again. We have the standard, we have the learning objective, the student achievement criteria, the task. How are the students going to have their learning guided through that? Those are the two questions before you leave, and I'll make sure that I break to give you enough time to work on that. So let's go and look at the ARC. All of you should have a copy of the ARC. You have 4 steps in the ARC. The task that I'm releasing you to do is to build your ARC for next week. Sixth grade should be working on your sixth grade standards, seventh grade on your seventh grade standards, eighth grade on your eighth grade standards. Fine arts and electives, you have your standards all posted. Remember, step one, you gotta have a clarified plan on the standard. I heard from social studies already, Dr. Hudson, the one you have posted is the overarching standard. We really need the benchmark. Don't use what I say. Go with what the babies need. So if you need to look at their benchmark, that's fine for me. But you know what I said about those social studies benchmarks? You may have to deconstruct all of them and then use A, B, C, D. Okay? So your task again is you're gonna look at your standard. You're gonna look at your standard or benchmark. You're gonna deconstruct it. You're gonna work as a team. You're gonna deconstruct it. You're gonna finish steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you go to common planning today, the plan for common planning is for you then to build tasks that are aligned to what you've created here today. You're not working in isolation. Sixth grade teachers should be working with sixth grade teachers, 7 with 7, 8 with 8, electives together, fine arts together. So someone brave, tell me, what is the task that I'm releasing you to do? Yes, love.
We are working with our group to do the learning arts for our standard for the week of February 14th, working together to make sure we complete steps 1 through 4.
Right. I'm going to give you about 30 minutes to work on that, and then I will call upon someone to share out the art. Great job, Mary Denali, on restating the task. The culminating task is going to be able to answer these 2 questions, which you're going to do in writing on the sticky note. You're going to answer these for me, same as you did last week. Put your name on the back, turn the sticky in to Ms. Hamilton, so I'll have the feedback. I'll need this at the end. But as you're thinking, and as you're working, as you're synthesizing your learning, understand that. Mr. Sylvester, you good, love? Ms. Hart, you good? Ortiz, you good? Ms. Perez, you good? All right. Ms. Rex, you got him? Awesome. Ms. Ramsey, you work? Okay. All right. You can go ahead and release to work. Thank you.
I took that sentence since I did, but I went a little extra.
That's what I was like.
I went a little extra, Dr. Hudson, and I did it more colorful. Okay. So my standard, overarching standard. This was the big. This was the one you. And the pink was my. And I have another color.
What resources? The only thing that I'm gonna ask you also is put where your resources came from. Okay. And that way when we ever need to go back and reflect, we got them, we don't have to do it.
But it helped me break it down by color because it's okay.
So it's the same standard for everyone?
No.
We all have different standards. Give me yours. Read the number.
2860. I'm sorry. Got it.
And you lost
Yeah.
all that stuff you do in the city.
Yep.
I guess so
What did
I
you do?
will. That works.
So you tell me who to put on.
We circle the verb, underline the noun. What do you call it? Freehand. Is freehand a noun?
No, that would be more of a, constant verb, like an adverb, right?
Yes, I think that's
Is it working? Am I there? What do I underline?
I would say underline numbers. Numbers expressed in scientific notation. Scientific notation.
What? Scientific notation. And interpreted by what? Scientific notation.
One is really, there's a lot to it.
And then you could probably, I think we need to split it up. But choose, I think choose is a verb.
Choose is also a verb. But that,
Yeah. You circle it on here.
they choose,
Mhm.
is it for the teacher to choose or for the student?
I think the students.
Choose units, so
I was contemplating with that.
after scientific notation and
Yeah,
choose,
choose.
there you go.
And then the now would be units.
Should it be circular and
Yeah, circle.
So you should.
One is you need a clean one?
Okay, so you should be on 17 too, which is interdependence of organisms in the biosphere, interdependence. So this week you did 17 when you did the transfer of energy,
So that's 8th grade is 17 too?
right? Yeah. So you did producers, consumers, you did food web. So next week you're doing the symbiotic relationships.
So it's based on the lessons and that on the for the school district and it has the energy changes right after the 17.
I'm like, well,
I don't, right, I don't follow it exactly, like, I'll read more. Because of the
Alright, we're gonna bring everybody back together, please, if I can have everyone back together. If I can have you all back together, please. I wanna tell you, I heard a lot of rich dialogue, I heard a lot of great debate and discourse. The same way we wanna hear debate and discourse in the classroom, you really modeled that perfectively in your task. I saw you actually digging into the resources to be able to justify why you were selecting the learning objective that you chose, right? So a lot of best practices, I saw a lot of best practices I heard. I'm gonna take 5 minutes out of your 15 minutes that I want you to do to get out the door. And there are some key people that I heard in key strategies that I heard that you use that I want you to share. So there are some lot of key strategies that I heard, and there's a lot of key ideas. Okay, now I get it, or I see where to find that, or I know where to get that. That I really want to call on some people to share, because it's not so much of a show off, because we're all in this together, we're all learning together. None of us has perfected that, perfected this, including myself. But there may be something that Ms. Morris is going to share with you that she did, that you may want to say, okay, let me try that as well. Ms. Morris, what you got for us?
So, when
Really,
Dr.
really loud.
When Dr. Hudson came to the Social Study Lab, she had said taking Post-it notes and putting everything on Post-it notes, that way you can move it around. So I took it and I put
Really
everything,
loud, so they can hear you.
I took it and put everything on colored index cards, and I put like my standard on one color, my learning objectives on another color. my student achievement criteria on another color, and then my task on another color, and then I laid it out on my floor so I could move things around and see what I had, and then that I just stacked it up, and that's how it'll go on my board. But I could also see what I have and what I don't have, and I can also move things around as I need to based on how it goes in the classroom, and it can also just plug into my lesson plan when I'm ready. And I did this for the entire rest of the unit math. So it's pretty much done, and it's just all ready to go.
So I challenged her to do one more thing, which is when she goes and pulls her resources, right? I would put like on the back, I got this from, I have support from CPOMs to support why I chose this learning objective. Where I got this support from the test item specs. I'll put that on there. So then we have the justification. The other thing that I just thought of while she was here is put this on a ringlet. Like put the standard on one card on front, put it on a ring, and then next time when you need to go back and make some changes, all of these are together with the ring. Got it? Makes sense? Great job. Let's give it up for Ms. Moore. I want to go to math, and there was so much great things going on over there, Mr. Sylvester. I don't know where you want to pull from first. Where you want to pull, Mr. Sylvester?
Let's start with that's 8th grade.
8th grade. Tell me a strategy that worked for you.
Go ahead.
Real loud, so ELA, you gotta yell at them.
Can you give a little bit more context specifically?
Sure. I want to know through the process that you went through today, what's something that you can give everybody else in this room that they can take back and use from what you got out of today?
Passing the mic.
Passing the mic.
Oh no, Mr. Dog has a good voice. Ms. Downey, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think the biggest takeaway, at least for me, and I think with our department, is using the test item specs, as Mr. Sylvester said, to go deeper into the actual standard, and not the standard, but the objective. So sometimes with math, it can be a little bit vague sometimes, and so if we're talking about scientific notations, the test item specs help detail exactly what type of numbers they're going to be looking at. So I don't know with ELA and I don't know with reading if it can be used in the same way, but I know as a math teacher, I don't have to use fractions when I'm talking about a certain topic. Or I know I don't have to use X, Y, and Z when I'm doing a certain topic, and the test item specs helps give more detail and context into actually what the students will be seeing and what they won't see. Will they get to use a calculator? Can they not use a calculator? And yes, thank you.
All right, what you got for me?
Okay. Hey everyone, good morning. So in our group, it's really funky working with access points, especially because the district also pushes us to use a system called unique learning. So we need to figure out how our access point standards and unique learning work together so that the students are ready for the alternative assessment at the end of the school year. So for this standard in particular, there are no resources on our unique learning. So we needed to pull everything from CPOMs. So as we work through our ARC, we cited where we found our resources and how we're going to implement that in the class. So CPOMs was our big resource for this standard.
Good morning, everybody. So I actually have the privilege of teaching the fun class, which is theater. So sorry to everyone else in the room, but I'm the lucky one. So as far as my standard goes, if you look to the left of the board, it says, explain the impact of choices made by directors, designers, and actors on audience understanding. And in the fine arts and electives, we also always have cross-curricular standards, especially for reading and writing, because we're really focused on growing our students in those areas. As especially in theater, if you don't know how to read, you're not going to be very successful with acting, because that's step one. So for my standard, what I noticed a lot was that not only was my district curriculum map very helpful because it breaks down exactly what the standard can cover, because in fine arts we have very vague standards for most of it, but also I noticed that Something that I've noticed with theater standards is that we stay on a learning objective for quite a while when it comes to that. So explaining the impact of directors, that could be something that we're not just focusing on one day. And then explaining the impact of choices made by designers. That's makeup design, costume design, set design, house marketing, publicity. So it kind of covers a large spectrum of design. So being able to break it down and really then look at my curriculum maps and look at CPOMs to see what exactly are they saying by design, what exactly are they saying by audience understanding, it was beneficial for me.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Hi, so one thing that our department talked about was the fact that since we are a content-based class rather than a skills-based class, our standards are very, very broad, and they're very overarching. So what we did was we looked at our benchmarks rather than our standards first, because we need to know how all of our benchmarks play into our standards. So what we do is we arc out each of those benchmarks as we go along, and then we take that overarching standard, and we would go and when we're getting to our review days, shall we call them, we would hit how each of those benchmarks hits, for example, the rights, which one would hit the roles, and which one would hit the responsibilities if we were doing civics.
Okay, so this one. I don't know how to work this. Use my teacher voice.
Far away, you probably gotta come a little closer
Testing, testing. So for ELA, can y'all hear? Is this working? Is it working? I don't know. Technical difficulty. I have a teacher voice, so I can use that teacher voice that I have. For ELA, it's the first time that we've done a writing standard for this breakdown. So for the learning arc, I really love that we're learning this in every facets of the standards, because this standard has a lot of subcategories, and we didn't really know how that played into the learning arc. And so we mainly use CPOMs and the breakdown of the sub-standards in order to be able to integrate that into not necessarily our learning objective, because the learning objective comes directly from the standard, but we were able to look at concepts of understanding, essential understandings broken down even further for the students to know what they need to know in order to get the learning objective, to get the higher standard. So I think it's a great learning curve for us to be able to know how to break it down to those essential concepts that are easy for us to overlook when we're teaching. So that's kind of what we do.
Thank you. Again, fabulous job, everyone. Instructional coaches. I just have one more thing I need you to work on. Probing. Make sure that when you're coaching them, your team, make sure that you're probing them with great questions. It's not that I'm saying it's the wrong answer, but I want to know, how do you know that that learning objective is really going to get us to full mastery of that standard? So just more probing, but I'm really, really, really proud. Now, remember what I want to see today when I'm walking classroom. I want to see that you're using your whiteboard configuration, right, to really guide your instruction. I also want to see that your students, you're preparing your students to actually use the whiteboard configuration so that they understand, okay, the linear motion from the standard all the way to the task. Because I do believe that at McLaughlin, students are they're going to start walking into your classrooms looking for that task. Okay, that's what I got to learn today. And they're going to immediately shift their brains to let me get from what you're saying, what I got to do today, so I can get to PE, so I can get to theater, so I can get to the other things that I really come here of course I love math and science, but the other things I want to come here and do. So remember, as you walk out the door, I need to know how you're going to use your whiteboard configuration to guide your instruction, not just posting it. That's compliance. You're good with that. And then I need to know how you're going to prepare your students to use the whiteboard configuration to guide their learning. Just put that on a sticky note, write your name on the back. Ms. Hamilton will collect those. Avengers, I know you gotta get out of here. I appreciate you, bye-bye. Teachers, eat up some more. I love you, and there's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. Let's have a great day. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Hudson. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
So we gonna switch, and I'm gonna be 21, and she gonna be 45. I want to thank our guests for coming today to listen to you. If they want to say anything, they're more than welcome. Avengers, I love you, but I know you have to leave because we got babies here. But if the guests, if you want to give any feedback, any suggestions on how we can do it better, because we're always trying to do it better, we would love to hear from you.
I love to hear how y'all think. There's a couple of people that impressed me with their brains and what they were saying, and I can tell also this isn't your first rodeo. Y'all been really working hard at it, and so that really stood out to me today.
Thank you, thank you.
Also, there was a lot of very respectful collaboration. Even if you maybe weren't agreeing exactly, you worked through that process, so you can tell your teams are strong and very respectful, and that is step one, is having that risk-free environment. So great job, guys. Looks good. Sounds good.
Matt?
I just want to say thank you for all of it, the work that you're doing and the work that you do every single day. Thank you very much.
All right, hats off to Mr. Ortiz when you see him, and Ms. Dix. They were responsible for breakfast this morning. They did a fabulous job. We do need you to eat up because we don't like leftovers. But make sure that you give your sticky notes to the other birthday girl today as you walk out, and we're going to have another great day. Thank you all.